Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the NECA Aliens Wave 9 Private Jenette Vasquez figure. Back when the Aliens line started, this was one of the figures I was really hoping we would get eventually because, well, Vasquez is one of my favorite characters in the film, and the smart gun that she uses is one of my favorite weapons in the entire Alien franchise. So it was a piece I was really looking forward to. Now, we got the smart gun before with the Kenner Ripley figure. This is the first time we'll get it with the full Steadicam style arm that they used from the movie, and it's the only non-Ripley female figure we've gotten in the line. And even though we've gotten two female characters, they were both Ripley, so I'm technically correct in saying that. It's weird to talk about the smart gun in terms of being an accessory, because it connects to the character itself, but yeah, it's an accessory. This is a little more complex than the version we got with the Kenner Ripley figure, but the main body of it is the same. With a little brake cable style grip back here, the other grip up here in the front, one little red indicator light, that's the only real color on this entire thing. It's mostly just black plastic. There's not even really any shading to show wear and tear on it, but there's a lot of great sculpting, a lot of intricate detail with the scaffolding, and I think that's the magazine right there. Just looks very, very good. The one thing that the original figure did not have that this does is this little arm coming off the side that's hinged in a couple different places. It hinges up here in the front. Then we get this kind of pivoty piece here in the middle that's designed to come apart. It really just pops in and out, but for the most part, you're going to be leaving that connected. We have another hinge here in the center. They give you a little more range of motion, and this part back here will actually clamp onto the piece connected to Vasquez's body. We also get some cables coming around. These are soft and flexible, so you don't have to worry about them getting caught up on anything. This one end is loose. I haven't gone back to the movie yet to look at where it plugs in, so I've just kind of been tucking it into the gun, somewhere where it looks good. I'm sure plenty of people who know where this actually is supposed to go will let me know in the comments. But it doesn't seem super important to get it in the perfect position to me, just somewhere where it looks decent. We also get a little muzzle flare effect. It's possibly translucent plastic. It does seem to let a lot of light through. It's a light whitish yellow with some darker orangey yellow tips to it to show the flare of the gun. It's a really nice little piece. If you look in the back, there's kind of a single strip of plastic in the middle of the hole in the back, and that will peg right into the edge of the smart gun. The smart gun almost has like a cross taken out of the front, so you could put it in one of two different ways depending on how it fits into that cross. And you have the muzzle flare effect, which I just really, really like. Something I kind of expect more from import figures, so it's cool to see it on a domestic one. Vasquez herself is an interesting figure. I think somewhere on the figure she may share some parts with Ripley, but I can't necessarily tell where those are exactly or if I'm just crazy. But a lot of this does seem to be new sculpting. And when I first saw prototypes for this figure, I thought NECA was giving us two different head sculpts. One with the kind of open face like you see here, and one with the targeting computer or whatever that eyepiece is, but it's actually all the same head, which is really, really cool. I think they did a fantastic job capturing the actress's likeness. It looks just like her. I love the pissed off expression they gave her. The bandana is nicely detailed on her head. All the markings on it, you can even see some texture sculpted in there. Her hair is very short, just like it was in the movie. They have a couple different shades of brown in there to give different highlights and depth to it. And then she has the communicator or the radio here on her head. So there's a soft rubber piece for the mouthpiece going down in front of her face, and the strap that goes over top of her head into this computery bit here on the side. Then we have the eyepiece that we can actually swivel back and forth on this hinge, and then we can rotate. So you can just take it, swivel it down, and it covers up her eye perfectly. A lot of times accessories like this will sit way too far away from the face and look kind of goofy, but this makes a pretty good seal around her eye, and I'm really impressed with how well it was done. It does have a cable that comes down to her armor, and it is soft and flexible, so you don't really have to worry about breaking it. We also have her camera up here on the side of her head, and then we do have the bandana ties back here, which are softer rubber as well. On her back, she has the light pack that we've seen with a lot of other Marines. I believe it's the exact same sculpt as those. It comes up over her shoulder here. It's not an articulated piece. You can't really move it. And it does have this little wire that you can kind of tuck behind her armor to make it look like it's plugged into something. And this whole section will unpeg, and she does have the peg hole here in the back. Her armor makes it a little harder to find the right spot to peg this in, but then again, all of these have been a pain in the butt for me to find the right place for, so it's kind of par for the course. See, her armor does sit above the rest of the sculpt of the figure. It's not really soft rubber, it's a little more rigid, but there's some good rivets in there and padding sculpted in there. It looks pretty nice. Come around to the front, we have her chest plate with her little quote there on it. Then we have the part of the smart gun attachment that actually clips onto her armor, or is part of her armor. So it has a hinge there at the base, a secondary hinge in the middle, and then a ball joint to rotate it all around, and then yet another hinge with a clip that actually attaches to the gun itself. And I'll show that all together here in a little bit. She has bare arms. We have these bands on the top of each arm, which are really nicely detailed. You can even see where they're tied here. And she has her fingerless gloves on both hands. And both hands are a closed sculpt to hold on to the gun better, which is awesome because that was a complaint with the Ripley figure, is that she dropped it very easily. She does have a trigger finger extended on her right hand, but you can't put like a pulse rifle or a handgun in that hand. It's permanently closed. You have to take a blade to it and open it up if you want to modify that. Vasquez then has a belt, which is kind of a thick rubberized belt, 2 pouches, one on either side. Some nice detailing with the stitches and the clasp and everything. Then you see the clip for that there in the back, looking very nice. Some well-detailed pockets there on her butt. The pants have a lot of good detail. Actually, the whole camo pattern, I kind of ignored it because it was under the armor on the upper part of her. But it's a very nice, different camo pattern than we've seen with a lot of the other Marines. A much lighter camo pattern. But you can see the cargo pants, really nicely detailed, all the wrinkles throughout. And then her standard issue boots, all the eyelets painted a nice silver. Different tones of brown in there. The treads nicely done. Then we do have peg holes there at the bottom of her feet. For articulation, Vasquez is pretty well articulated. She has a ball joint at the base of her neck so she could look up, not a ton, but a decent amount. She could look down, she could rotate her head side to side. It eventually is hindered by the eyepiece, but you're turning your head pretty darn far before it starts to pull, so not super limited by that factor. You also tilt the head. Shoulders are on pin and socket joints. They will go forward, they will go back, and they'll go out to the side. They won't go fully down to her sides because of the bulkiness of her armor, but for the most part, you get a good range there. You get a single jointed elbow. It bends about 90 degrees. And then we could also rotate there at the elbow. Her hands are on ball joints. They do have a tendency to pop off, especially my right hand here, but they pop right back in. And honestly, popping it off kind of makes it easier to get her to hold the smart gun, so it's not the worst thing in the world that they come off. She has a mid-torso ball joint, so she can go a little bit backwards, a little bit forwards, and rotate side to side, and maybe tilt a little bit. There's not much room in here because she has the thick belt and the armor up at the top, so it really does kind of hinder her up and down movement at her waist, but she definitely has a good swivel there. Legs are on pin and socket joints. They will go forward, back, and they will go out to the side as well as rotate. As I always mention with these figures, they have the soft rubberized diaper that kind of lets it move with a greater degree of motion. There's a single joint at the knee, bends a little more than 45 degrees, and will also rotate. And then we have a pretty nice ball joint here at the foot. Once you give Vasquez the smart gun, you do get a little limited with your articulation range and movement range, just because you're working against a lot of different parts here. It is pretty easy to get her to aim where the front of the gun's going. You can't really bring the gun up into kind of her ready position like you see in the film where it's over her shoulder, but you can get an okay enough range where you can get her into some good dynamic action poses. Just keep in mind that it is about as limited as you'd probably expect it to be. For a size comparison, here's Vasquez next to the Kenner version of Ripley, which is the same body as the normal Ripley, and a standard Marine, in this case using Frost from this wave, and I think she looks really good compared to these other figures. It's actually the first time I put her next to a Ripley figure, and it works really well. Sigourney Weaver is a tall lady, and you can see Vasquez is quite a bit shorter than both her and Frost, which is accurate. This figure gets a very high recommend. To some degree, it's almost a one-trick pony because she has one big accessory. I think for the most part, it's going to be the only thing you're going to pose her with and the only way you're really going to have her displayed. But to me, it's such an iconic weapon, and especially because it's the first time we get this weapon, it makes it a really, really freaking cool figure. The detailing on it is what we've come to expect with NECA. The articulation range is honestly better than I was really thinking it would be. I was kind of wondering if they would do something similar to what the Mini-Mates did, where the arm for the smart gun is a static piece that can connect to the chest armor in multiple places to allow it to sit at different levels. But NECA did the best job I think they possibly could have to fully articulate this thing. And while I already mentioned it still is limited, it's well engineered and obviously very well thought out and executed to to what I think is probably the best case scenario here. So a high recommend for this figure. I absolutely love it. Make sure you follow me on Instagram using the name Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, it's been our Outside the Box Reviews. Game over, man! Game over!